Throughout the long chronicle of human civilization, empires have risen and fallen like waves upon the shore. Ancient Egypt thrived along the banks of the Nile. Rome transformed from a humble city-state into the master of the Mediterranean. China built dynasties that endured for centuries. Yet among these mighty powers, one name stands apart, not only for the size of its territory, but for the sheer speed, ferocity, and global impact of its rise. The Mongol Empire dated in just over a century, from the late 12th to the mid-14th century. A people once dismissed as barbarians from the windswept steppes of Central Asia forged the largest continuous land empire the world had ever known. It stretched from the shores of the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe, a dominion that would reshape trade, politics, warfare, and the fate of continents. How did a collection of nomadic tribes, without monumental cities, sophisticated technology, or vast armies, conquer civilizations far older and seemingly far stronger? To answer that, we must journey back over 800 years, to a world of endless horizons and unforgiving winds, to the Mongolian steppe, where power was not forged in palaces but on horseback. At the heart of Asia lies a colossal sea of grass, stretching from Manchuria in the east to the Ural Mountains in the west, the Eurasian steppe. This vast, treeless expanse was a world unlike the river valleys of China, the cities of Mesopotamia, or the kingdoms of Europe. There were no granaries here, no stone walls, no settled capitals, only sky, wind, horses, and tribes. Life on the steppe was brutal. Winters bit deep, summers were scorching, and the climate could swing violently in a single day. Survival depended on mobility. People lived by herding animals, horses, sheep, goats, and followed the rhythms of the grasslands. Moving wherever pasture was plentiful in this environment, strength, speed, and skill in battle were not luxuries. They were necessities. Without fixed borders, tribes fought constantly over grazing lands, livestock, and water. Alliances formed and dissolved with the seasons. This relentless struggle for survival produced warriors who were not only fearless, but highly adaptable, riders who could cover hundreds of kilometers in a day, archers who could strike with deadly accuracy at full gallop, and leaders who valued cunning as much as courage. It was from this harsh crucible that the Mongols emerged, a people forged by the wind and raised to fight. In 1162, amid the endless plains near the Anan River, a boy named Temujin was born into a small clan of the Borjigin tribe. His father, Yesugei, was a minor chieftain, not a king, not a conqueror. Few could have imagined that this child would one day become Genghis Khan, universal ruler of the Mongols. Temujin's early life was marked by tragedy. At the age of 9, his father was poisoned by a rival clan. Stripped of power and protection, his family was cast out by their own people. They survived by scavenging roots, catching fish, and hunting small animals. Temujin himself was captured and enslaved before managing a daring escape, experiences that instilled in him a ruthless determination to never again be powerless. These hardships shaped the foundation of his character. He learned that loyalty was fragile, that survival required resilience, and that true strength came from unity, not just personal might. From an early age, Temujin resolved to change the destiny of his people. As Temujin grew into adulthood, he began the arduous task of rebuilding his clan's power. But unlike previous chieftains who fought for plunder or revenge, Temujin had a far greater vision: to unite all Mongol tribes under one banner. He understood that brute force alone would never achieve this. Instead, he used tools rare among nomadic leaders: diplomacy, loyalty, and justice. He rewarded skill and merit rather than noble birth, promoting even former enemies if they proved capable. He forged alliances through marriage, oath, and shared purpose. And when enemies surrendered, he often spared them and integrated them into his growing confederation. Over the next 2 decades, Temujin systematically subdued rival clans, the Merkits, Tatars, Naimans, and Carats among them. Each victory was more than a battle won. It was a step toward a unified nation. For the first time in Mongol history, the scattered tribes of the steppe were beginning to see themselves not as rivals, but as part of a greater whole. In 1206, a grand Kurultai, a council of tribal leaders, was convened. There, Temujin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, meaning Great Khan, or Universal Ruler. It was a title that would echo across history. This moment marked more than the rise of a single man. It was the birth of a nation. The Mongols, once fragmented and divided, were now a united military power with a shared identity, a new legal code, Yasa, and a mission to expand beyond their homeland. The windswept plains that had once limited their ambitions now seemed like a launching ground for conquest. With the tribes united, Genghis Khan turned his gaze outward. His first target was the Western Xia Kingdom, a regional power on China's northwestern frontier. After a series of grueling campaigns, the Mongols crushed their defenses, a warning to the world of what was to come. Next came the far greater challenge, the Jin Dynasty, rulers of northern China and one of the most powerful states in Asia. Beginning in 1209, Mongol armies swept across the plains, bypassing strongholds and encircling cities. Their superior mobility and psychological warfare shattered Jin resistance. By 1215, Chengdu, today's Beijing, had fallen, but Genghis Khan's ambitions stretched far beyond China. In 1219, a diplomatic incident changed the course of history. A caravan of Mongol merchants was murdered in the Khwarezmian Empire, a powerful Islamic state in Central Asia. For Genghis Khan, this was not just an insult, it was a declaration of war. The response was devastating. Mongol forces thundered westward, crossing deserts and mountain ranges, laying siege to great cities like Bukhara and Samarkand. Their conquest was ruthless and swift, annihilating armies many times their size and dismantling an empire that had stood for centuries. The ancient Silk Road now lay under Mongol control, linking east and west under a single authority. The Mongols' astonishing victories were not the product of luck or numbers. They were the result of a military system unlike anything the world had seen. Tactical innovation, feigned retreats lured enemies into traps, where Mongol cavalry enveloped and annihilated them. Unmatched mobility. Each warrior rode multiple horses, allowing rapid travel over vast distances and outpacing any opponent. Intelligence and reconnaissance. Extensive spy networks gathered crucial information, enabling Genghis Khan to strike with precision. Psychological warfare. Tales of Mongol ferocity spread ahead of their armies, causing many cities to surrender without a fight. Siege technology. Mastery of Chinese and Persian. Siege techniques allowed them to capture even the most fortified cities. This was not a barbarian horde. It was a meticulously organized war machine. Its discipline, flexibility, and speed made it nearly unstoppable. Against the Mongols, even the mightiest empires crumbled. The death of Genghis Khan in 1227 did not mark the end of the Mongol expansion. On the contrary, the empire he founded was only just beginning to reach its full potential. His son and successor, Genghis Khan, continued the campaigns with remarkable success. Under his leadership, the Mongols completed the conquest of the Jin dynasty in northern China and turned their attention toward the wealthy southern Song in the south. This campaign would take decades, but it laid the foundation for Mongol dominance over the Chinese heartland. Meanwhile, Mongol armies pushed westward on an unprecedented scale. Under the command of Beta Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson, they swept across the vast Russian plains, destroying principalities and reshaping the political landscape of Eastern Europe. In 1241, they crushed the combined forces of Poland and Hungary at the Battle of Mohi, striking terror into the heart of Christendom. For the first time, the people of Western Europe faced the reality that their world could be overrun by warriors from the East. At the height of their power, Mongol horsemen advanced deep into Europe, but fate intervened. News of Gedi's death forced the Mongol princes to return home to elect a new great Khan. Europe, devastated but intact, was spared from complete conquest, a twist of history that changed the trajectory of the continent. The Mongol Empire reached its true zenith under Kublai Khan, perhaps the most visionary of all Genghis Khan's descendants. Recognizing that ruling a settled agrarian civilization required more than military power, Kublai sought to transform the empire from a conquering force into a stable and enduring state. In 1271, he established the Yuan dynasty, becoming the first non-Han emperor to rule all of China. This was not just a military triumph. It was a political and cultural transformation that reshaped Asia. At its peak, the Mongol Empire spanned over 35 million square kilometers, stretching from the Pacific to the Danube and from Siberia to Persia. It united nearly a quarter of the world's landmass under a single political order, creating a scale of power and influence the world had never seen before. To govern such a vast and culturally diverse empire, the Mongols created one of the most sophisticated systems of administration the medieval world had ever witnessed. At its heart was the Yasa, a legal framework initiated by Genghis Khan and expanded by his successors. Although never fully codified in writing, the Yasa provided a set of shared principles that applied across the empire. Laws governing military discipline, trade, taxation, theft, and punishment for treason. This universal legal system allowed countless peoples, from Chinese farmers to Persian merchants, to coexist under a single predictable order. The Mongols also revolutionized communication with the establishment of the Yam system, a vast network of relay stations that spanned thousands of kilometers. Couriers could change horses and rest at these stations, allowing messages and intelligence to travel at remarkable speeds. This infrastructure connected the empire from end to end, enabling the central government to coordinate military campaigns, collect taxes, and manage trade across continents. Equally transformative was the Mongols' approach to governance and diversity. Rather than imposing their beliefs on subject peoples, they embraced religious tolerance, a rarity in the medieval world. Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, and shamans were all allowed to practice freely, creating a sense of stability across the empire's many cultures. This tolerance was not born of idealism, but of pragmatism. It was a tool to prevent rebellion and build loyalty. The Mongols were also pragmatic in their use of talent. Scholars, administrators, engineers, and artisans from across Eurasia were recruited into imperial service. Persian bureaucrats helped administer finances. Chinese engineers advanced siege technology and infrastructure, and Arab astronomers contributed to science and navigation. By gathering the best minds from across their domains, the Mongols built a cosmopolitan empire that thrived on diversity and innovation. Yet even the mightiest empires are vulnerable to the forces of time, and the Mongol Empire was no exception. Its vastness, once its greatest strength, eventually became its greatest weakness. After Genghis Khan's death, the empire had been divided among his descendants into four major khanates: the Great Khanate in Mongolia and China, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, the Golden Horde in Eastern Europe and Russia, and the Ilkhanate in Persia and the Middle East. Initially, these khanates acknowledged the authority of the Great Khan, but cultural differences, political rivalries, and conflicting interests soon eroded their unity. By the late 13th century, the khanates functioned as independent states, sometimes even waging war against one another. The once unified empire began to fracture into regional powers with diverging ambitions. External pressures compounded the problem. In 1260, the Mamluks of Egypt halted Mongol expansion into Africa at the Battle of Ain Jalut, proving that the once invincible horsemen could be defeated. In China, native resistance grew stronger, culminating in the fall of the Yuan dynasty to the Ming in 1368. In Europe and the Middle East, new powers adapted their tactics to counter Mongol mobility and organization. Trade routes, once the arteries of Mongol power, began to shift. Worse still, they became conduits for catastrophe. Along the Silk Road, the Black Death spread westward from Asia to Europe, devastating populations and economies alike. The pandemic weakened the Mongols' hold on trade and shattered the prosperity that had once sustained their empire. Though the empire eventually disintegrated, its legacy remains deeply embedded in the fabric of world history. The Mongols did more than conquer. They connected, forging links between civilizations that had long been isolated from one another. Trade flourished on a scale never before seen. Under Mongol rule, the Silk Road entered a golden age, carrying not only silk and spices, but also ideas, technologies, and religions. It was through this vast exchange network that gunpowder, papermaking, and printing spread westward, while mathematics, astronomy, and medicine from the Islamic world traveled east. Even individuals, such as the Venetian explorer Marco Polo, could journey across continents and serve in the Mongol court, a testament to the unprecedented openness of the era. The Mongols also pioneered innovations in statecraft. Their postal relay system anticipated modern communication networks. Their taxation systems influenced later empires, and their emphasis on meritocracy and multicultural administration set precedents that shaped governance for centuries to come. Even their military tactics, mobility, intelligence, psychological warfare, continue to be studied in military academies today. Most importantly, the Mongols reshaped the global balance of power. By connecting East and West in a single political and economic system, they laid the foundations for the globalized world that would emerge centuries later. Empires rose and fell in their wake, but none could ignore the transformative legacy of the Mongols. In the end, the Mongol Empire lasted less than 2 centuries, a brief moment in the vast span of human history. Yet in that time, they achieved what no other civilization had before. They united most of Eurasia. created the first truly global trading network, and transformed the course of world history. They were feared as destroyers and admired as visionaries. They left cities in ashes and built bridges between continents. And though their empire is long gone, the echoes of their hoofbeats still reverberate through the story of humanity. A reminder that even from the most unlikely beginnings, a people can rise to change the world forever.